Hello everyone, myself Naeem Ahmed. I have completed BE and MTech from Electronics and Communication Department, specialization in data science. Basically, I am from Bangalore. I have 6 years of teaching experience and 1 year of industry experience. Today, I am here to explain the concept of Identity Access Management, abbreviated as IAM. It is one of the global services provided by Amazon Web Services. So let's start. The contents of today's video is going to be like this. First, I will be explaining what is the meaning of IAM. Followed by, I will explain how we are going to create users, how we are going to create groups, and how to assign roles for those users and groups. After that, we will see how we can give permissions to these particular groups. Finally, we are going to see the hands-on demo, how we are going to create user and groups in the Amazon Web Services. Let us continue. First, as I told you, I am going to start explaining with what do you mean by Identity Access Management. Identity Access Management, also known as IAM, is a web service that helps you to securely control the access to AWS resources. I repeat, it is one of the web service which help you to securely control. So who is going to access the resources provided by Amazon Web Service? So you will understand more in this one. Just try to understand the definition here. It helps to securely control the access to AWS resources. Now, you use IAM control. So when we are going to use it in order to authenticate, for example, when you are signing into Facebook or when you are signing into Gmail, you need to sign by giving your email ID and password, isn't it? That is known as authentication. So this provides control who can authenticate and authorize the permission to the resources. So you being the admin can control who can access what resource, okay, and you can give authority for that particular user. When you first create a AWS account, you begin with a single sign-in identification, isn't it? So that identification is known as root user. For example, once you create a AWS account, so they will give you a user ID and password. That user ID and password will be to access the root user. Okay? The root user is accessed by signing in with the email address and the password that you use to create the account. Okay, so let me summarize this slide. There are AWS services, there are services. So in that one, I have one of the service called IAM. This service is used to create users for whom you people can authenticate and you people can authorize to access the resources. So here I have a small example. So as you can see, you are an admin here in the left hand side. So basically this is going to be a root user. So you are going to provide a secure access to these groups. So you can see 3 people here. They can be taken as users. So these 3 people I have grouped as group 1, The remaining these three people I have grouped as group 2. These three people again I have grouped them as group 3. So as you can see, group 1 is having access to AWS resources, whereas group 3 is also having access to AWS resources, whereas group 2 as well as the users present in group 2, they don't have any access to the AWS resources. Fine. So who is going to give that access? This admin. Okay, who is holding the root account. So this defines the definition. So IAM is a web service that helps you securely control access to AWS resources. Fine. So in general, AWS is a permission system that regulates the access to AWS resources. Administrator can assign who can access on AWS account. So allows administrator to assign permission to group of users. So the administrator can also give permission to an entire group, not only to a user, but to an entire group. We will see all these things in the next slide. Users are people in your organization and can be grouped. The first thing is there are something called users. So these users are people in your organization and these users can be grouped. Okay? Groups can only contain users but not other groups. So we will see this here with a small example. Here I am taking example of our engineering college. I hope you people are graduates, or some or the other time you people might have attended a college where you people might have come across a principal, then dean, then HODs, then faculties, professors, students, isn't it? And some supporting staff like housekeeping people and security, librarians. There are so many people who are there in an organization. For example, let us take an example of a principal. So principal being a head of the organization, let us take him as an admin. So he is having access to give particular support and he can allocate resources to the HODs, supporting staff, librarians, students and whom not. So let us take you being students, you people were not having much privilege. For example, you people cannot set a question paper, isn't it? Who is having access to set a question paper? A HOD can set a question paper, or an examiner being a professor can set a question paper. Since you people are students, you cannot set a question paper, isn't it? And similarly, you people cannot take attendance. Why you cannot take attendance? Because only a professor, a HOD or a principal is having access to the attendance. Likewise, a security person or a librarian or a housekeeping staff cannot come and sit in a classroom and listen to a lecture of a professor. Why? Because they don't have access. I hope you people are getting my point. So what it is? Students, isn't it? Students, I am considering students as an entire group. Okay? So you people are having specific privilege you people can enjoy. Similarly, a professor is having specific privileges and access to the resources. For example, attendance, setting the question paper, giving the assignment. So only a professor can do that. Okay, or a higher authority to a professor can do that. Similarly, a principal. A principal is having all the access in the organization. He can call meetings of the HODs. He can speak to the higher authority, isn't it? He can even take classes. He can enjoy all the privileges because I am considering him as a admin. And he can also create groups, isn't it? He can create groups. He can give the access to those groups. So that is what we are doing here. That is what we are doing in IAM. I am just going to imagine I have my own organization. I am going to create a number of users. If I want, I can group them. Okay? And if I want, I can give some access to the particular group or a particular user. I hope you are good with the example. So now let us move on. Try to understand what are the IAM users, groups and roles. So users are people in your organization and can be grouped. For example, I told you the organization of a college. So the groups are students. Who are the users? Obviously a particular student, isn't it? So if you have n number of students, we are going to call it as group of students. Similarly, if you have n number of security people, we are going to call it as security, group of security, isn't it? So they can be users. Similarly, we have one more thing. Groups can only contain users. In a group, there is a rule that you can only have users but not another group. For example, in a group of students, you can have only students. You cannot put a professor there and tell he is a member of the group. Similarly, you cannot have one group inside another group. Okay? Users don't have to belong to a group. It can be a scenario where a user is not belonging to any of the group and users can belong to multiple group. Try to understand here. There are scenarios where user cannot belong to any of the group and there are also scenarios where a single user can belong to multiple groups. So let us create an organization. So in our organization, we have 6 people in total. Who are those people? We have Alice, Bob, Charles, David, Edward and Fred. These are the 6 people who are there in my organization. So I am going to group Alice, Bob and Charles in one group, and the reason for grouping them one, because they are all developers. Since Alice, Bob and Charles, all 3 are developers, I am grouping them as a developers team or a group of developers. Similarly, David and Edward are group of operations. Fine. Now, Fred is not belonging to any of the group. So as we told just now, they don't have to belong to any group. It is not necessary that they should belong to any of the group. Okay, so they are set free. Fred is not belonging to any of the group. Whereas Charles and David is belonging to 2 different groups. Which are those? Charles belongs to both the group of developer as well as audit team. So Charles is there in audit team as well. So that is the reason Charles belongs to both the group of developers as well as audit team. Similarly, David also belongs to the group of operations as well as audit teams. Okay, I hope you people are clear with this. So in total, we have 3 groups. Okay, as you can see, which are those 3 groups? Developers, audit team, and operations. Fine. So Fred is not belonging to any of the group, whereas Charles and David is belonging to 2 different groups. So how we are going to give permissions and policies? Likewise, I told you we are going to give different permissions for different groups. Okay, so users or groups can be assigned with JSON documents. JSON documents are nothing but the set of rules or the policies, or I can also call them as a protocol. Okay, so they are the set of rules. These policies define the permissions of the users. So the policy or the protocol or the JSON document all are same. There are only the different names. Okay, so these policies will give the set of rules. So we had users, we created them or we put them in different groups. Now we want to give policies or set of rules to these different groups. These set of rules are known as JSON documents or permissions or policies. Okay, so these policies define the permissions of the user. These policies will tell you what they can access. Okay, note, in AWS you apply the least privilege. You are going to give the least privilege for these people. Try to give them as least privilege as possible. Okay, the reason is the security issue. You cannot give each and every access to a user. It is an easy task, but it will compromise the security, isn't it? So if you are giving access to each and every person, it will compromise the security of the resources. So make sure you are giving the least privilege to every user. You give the privilege or you give the permission only if they need it, isn't it? For example, students are given the permission to come and sit in the class. Okay, but students have not given a permission to come and sit in the staff room, isn't it? That is known as permission. Fine. So in the block diagram, you can see I have a IAM group. I have a number of IAM users. So this is the policy. This is the group policy. Fine. You can see according to the policy, this group is having access to S3 bucket, whereas they don't have access to EC2 instances. These two are different services which we will be dealing with in upcoming classes. So the block diagram gives it everything. So next we have, let us make this class more interesting, and we are going to have a hands-on demonstration how we are going to create a user and groups. Here we are at AWS Management Console. So let me search as IAM. So we are in IAM dashboard. As you people can observe, it is a global services. So we don't have to give any region selection here. You people can observe IAM does not require region selection, isn't it? So that's why we don't have to give any region selection. It is a global service. So here you can see in the left hand side, you can observe user groups, users and roles. Okay, so let me start with users. Why? Because I wanted to create a new user. So I have selected as users. Then let me click on add users. So this is similar to creating any online account, like you people might have created a Facebook account, or you people might have created a Gmail account. Okay, this is how we create a account. And while creating every account, the first thing what it is going to ask is a username. So that is what I am going to enter here. So I am going to enter a username. I have entered my own name. The username goes here. So once I have given the username, what is the next thing it is going to ask? Of course, it is going to ask the password. So I want to give password to my user. So in order to do that, you are going to check on the small box here, so where I can create my own password. I can generate it automatically in case if I am creating a user other than myself, or else if I want to generate a temporary password. For example, if I am creating a user outside my organization, I will create the user, then I will let him to generate his own password. So I will generate a temporary password, and I will let him, I will send the credentials through mail, and I will ask him to generate his own password. But here I am creating my own account, so I will create my own password. Here I have typed my password. Once the password is typed, you can go for next. Here, this is the place where we can add the user to a particular group, or you can create a group of yourself. So let me create a group as well. I will create a group called administrator. So create group. So the name of the group what I am going to create is as admin. The name what I have given is admin. And what are the permissions which I am going to give to this particular group? I am going to give the administrator access. So once I have given the administrator access, it's like I have given each and every access available in my resource, that is AWS resource. So since this account is of myself, I am giving the administrator access. Okay, so the name of the group is admin. I am going to create the group. So you can see the group is created, and I have selected add users to the group. So the user by the name Naeem Ahmed will be added to the group called admin. And what is the permission given to this particular group? It is having the administrator access, isn't it? So next. So these are the tags. Tags are everywhere in AWS. So it is like we people can come to know by the particular tags of a particular user. So it is optional right now. We will see this in the upcoming slides. So let me review. You can see the username is Naeem Ahmed. What is the access type? He is AWS Management Console access. We can access only with a password. So the password is console customized. What is the group Naeem Ahmed is belonging to? Naeem Ahmed is belonging to the group admin. And what are the policies? He is having a policy of administrator. So let me create user by clicking on this button. So here you can see I have successfully created a user. I can download the credentials here. And I can also send mail of my credentials to anyone else. That's it, guys. That's it for today's session. Thank you for listening to me. If you have any doubt, you can please contact me here. Thank you.